This paper is about how two British ex-colonies imagined and tried to create their futures. In the early 1950s, the then colony of Newfoundland joined Canada and started an ambitious plan to transform its rural white villagers into an industrial workforce. In the 1970s and 1980s, Jamaica tried several strategies to create a more prosperous future for its black and brown citizenry, first aligning with other third world nations, then aiming to become indispensable to U.S. business production. In this paper, we'll use these cases to articulate how speculation works on the periphery. By speculation, we're referring to practices that articulate and aim to build towards a specific, collective, possible but uncertain future. Such speculation is widely used in technology design constructively, that is, as a stepping stone towards actually creating the futures that are being imagined. We see speculation in action through the development of strategies for explicitly constructing these futures, like scenarios or prototyping. Another mode of speculation common in design uses similar strategies to contest futures rather than construct them. This form of speculation involves polished prototypes of technologies which are technologically plausible in the near future, but reflect values and evoke social contexts that are outside of what is considered normal. Such strategies are used to question the futures that we're building towards and to establish the possibility of other options. These modes of speculation are often examined from the perspective of colonial centers, who are generally framed as the authors of speculation. But in our work, we're specifically looking at how to understand speculation in postcolonial contexts. We build on this definition of speculation to understand what speculation looks like when framed from the periphery.
Both cases we examine involve states on the periphery crafting specific imagined futures in which they have arrived as developed economies. These imagined futures were used to underwrite concrete programs of action that enrolled citizens and other actors in national development projects. Each case's approach to speculation was shaped by its unique cultural and historical situation. With its native population first decimated and then invisibilized, Newfoundland's impoverished settlers became a main source of cheap labor within the colonial system. Their impoverishment was understood as the sign of a failed colony. On confederation with Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador engaged in a desperate race to catch up to become like nearby white-dominated settler states in order to forestall mass migration to the wealthier mainland. Its speculative strategy was to directly adopt forms of industrialization that had already succeeded in Canada and the U.S., irrespective of whether they suited the local context. Its government crafted a vision of a transformed province, with new industrial centers replacing fishing villages, steady-wage factory jobs replacing the independent fishery, and Newfoundlanders transformed from rural peasants to consumers enjoying modern amenities. Our paper looks at two key programs which aim to transform society to match this vision. The first was a program that shut down rural communities, moving fisher families to cities where industrial jobs were supposed to be awaiting them. Using tactics that gradually became coercive, the government analyzed what communities should be shut down, offered subsidies to communities willing to resettle, and stopped maintaining infrastructures for those who remained behind. The second was a program to jumpstart industrial development by enticing foreign management and capital. The state pumped millions into a high-visibility factory-building program with little oversight, taking on most of the risk. Most of the produced factories quickly failed. The end result stranded resettled rural residents in towns with access to neither traditional subsistence resources nor industrial employment.
The Jamaican government also sought transformation. It had long been a supplier of raw materials to the industries at the colonial center, and neither the abolishment of slavery nor securing independence from England brought real economic self-determination. Our paper looks at two different speculative visions for securing that. The first vision was of a black-centered nation outside of Western capitalism and a history of minority rule. Driven by a commodity boom in the 1970s, a democratic socialist government nationalized industries and invested in social programs to address the country's racial disparities. But things fell apart. A global recession decreased demand for the raw materials that were the economic engines of this vision. A successive government then proposed that the island's future would be found within rather than against the West's mode of development. These new plans embraced direct foreign investment in former factories that would now process data for American businesses.
Hi there, it's me again. What's the connection between this old factory and all this technology? Jobs. Thanks to a new agreement just signed between government and Cable and Wireless, millions of dollars are being invested to turn this into this, creating jobs for Jamaicans. It just goes to show you, when everybody works together, good things happen.
Planners imagined that the transfer of technology and know-how from these foreign firms would catalyze a local tech industry that would remake Jamaica for an upcoming digital world. But the same technologies that brought in businesses have allowed them to quickly slip away.
What can we learn from these two cases about how speculation is pursued on the periphery? We've seen that research on speculation at the center contrasts two modes of speculation. The first mode is constructive. It's practically oriented, dreams big, and is focused on actually establishing a new future. The second, contesting mode, dreams even bigger. It purposefully expands our visions beyond what seems likely or possible in order to destabilize our assumptions about whether these are necessary or desirable futures and to suggest other possibilities. In our historical cases, we see a mix of these two modes. Speculation was simultaneously audacious and pragmatic, tied to pressing problems that urgently needed resolutions. Newfoundland and Labrador faced a looming mass outmigration. Jamaica addressed the historic impoverishment of much of its workforce. When speculation is driven by desperation, the line between the pragmatic and the fantastical becomes hard to discern. Newfoundland and Labrador envisioned an industrial wonderland on a difficult-to-access island in the cold waters of the North Atlantic. Jamaica pitched a neoliberal tropical paradise with open economies and friendly natives that would tap into the capital and expertise of faraway firms. In their marriage of audacity and necessity, speculation in these cases takes incongruous stances. They appear, in turn, highly pragmatic and wildly fantastical, emancipatory and conservative, focused on the future and wrapped up in the past. Our core argument is that these incongruities come about because these projects on the periphery had to work together both modes of speculation, constructive and contesting. In the constructive mode, these projects aim to create a coherent vision of a future societal situation that could motivate and underwrite action in the present. That action would establish the projected future by providing a sense of certainty within the very real challenge of creating economic prosperity for smaller postcolonial states, painfully aware of their marginal roles on the world stage. In the contesting mode, these projects envisioned alternatives to a status quo, which would leave them stuck in developing status. These visions of themselves as established economic powers, or even as states with full agency, questioned established realities and power structures. In the end, speculation from the periphery is constrained by economic resources and the actions of geopolitical powers. But it is simultaneously freed from long-standing narratives about how technology produces presents and futures. Innovation from the center looks like constructing futures, but on the periphery, it contests, even while it constructs.